Okay, hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. Joining us today, actually. Joined with my new partner in crime, Mr. Kaz of the Atheist Edge. How are you doing today?
Hey man, how's it going? I'm doing good. How are you? Can you hear me?
And I can't hear you.
Wow.
There we go. I can hear you now. Okay, so looks like it's pretty hot back there. Are you in hell, or are you joining me live from hell?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at.
I like that new background that you got there. So, have you got a chance to overlook some of the questions that I sent to you today?
I did. I wrote down my answers. I'm ready to go.
Okay, good. All right. Well, actually, we're having a conversation today, and your daughter was like interrupting, and I thought it was funny. Your daughter was like interrupting, and I thought it was funny because she's looking for her brother. And my daughter's 4 now, so she's just starting to get to the point where she has a little bit more understanding. But I can't have like deep talks or philosophical discussions with her or anything. But we're trying to get her a sibling, but no luck yet. You got any tips
on how to get a sibling? Or
yeah. Do you have like one of the calendars or an app? I heard there's an app you could use.
Well, you can use the app to time your copulations with ovulations. I suppose.
That's a nice way to put it.
I suppose you could see a fertility doctor.
That maybe we might have to.
I don't know.
It's crazy. I'm not sure if I told you this. Yeah, I'm not sure if I told you this, but I was actually divorced from her for 5 years, and I went back to America. I found Jesus Christ, came back to South Korea, and the night I got back, she got pregnant with our daughter, and now my daughter's just turned 4. She's 4.5 now, and we haven't been able to have a second. So I'm not sure what you believe in as far as fate or destiny, but that definitely seemed like fate going on there. But okay, here we go. I was wondering if you could tell me real quick how many kids you have yourself.
Well, I have 2 sons that live with me, and I have a daughter with my ex.
Lucky man. I think if I can have one son, I'll call it quits. But all right, so real quick before we get started, I was wondering if you could tell me just really briefly about what age did you become an atheist, and furthermore, how serious, like how much of your personal identity would you say it plays?
Well, I became an atheist in like my early or very late 20s to early 30s, I guess. Sometime around graduating college, I'd say, to be a complete atheist. And you asked how much of a role it plays in my identity, right?
In your life.
Mm-hmm. In my life. Well, I'd say it's a pretty big role, I suppose. There's this hole, I'd say, you'd say, where religion was a big part of my life growing up. It was pretty fundamental and central to it because we were Jehovah's Witnesses. So,
wow.
Pretty much our entire lives were revolving around religion. So, when I became an atheist, this part of my life was fundamentally altered. So, being an atheist does have a big role in my life continuously.
Are you out of the closet with your family?
Yeah, I'm out of the closet with everybody. I don't hide it at all.
Okay, and did that cause, or does it continue to cause issues?
Does continue to cause issues.
It does.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we could probably touch a little bit on that. The topic of today. You want this topic?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about how secularism affects parenting. Right.
Yeah, and you know what? So let me clear the air on something, because I saw you in a debate with these two. I don't know they're two theists. I don't know what exactly to qualify them as, but they're theists, and they were kind of just going off, man. I mean, talk about popping off. And so, um, I think, what do you think about a difference of approach to dealing with people, like rather than just trying to be confrontational, to try to, just truly, genuinely engage? What do you think about that as a method?
You're asking me, what do I think about the method of being confrontational when trying to share your ideas, or
do you think it's helpful?
Well, I think that when it comes to trying to share your ideas, every method has its place and time. I think there's a Bible verse that says something to that effect. But
Ecclesiastes 3, to everything there's a season.
Right. So being confrontational isn't inherently bad in and of itself, I wouldn't say. But, there are inappropriate ways to be that way, of course. And then there's also having the humility, the self-awareness to be able to know when not to be that way and when to accept criticism, to accept other information and adjust yourself accordingly.
Sure. Yeah, well, thank you for your contributions. I knew as soon as I saw that debate, if you call it a debate, more like a shit show, but I knew as soon as I saw that, like, I had to talk to you. I'm really glad that you're coming on as a permanent host. So I definitely look forward to contributing to a more empathetic world for, speaking of parenting, for our children. So with that being said, I do want to start off with the first question, which is, what ethics do you teach your children if they are not based in religiosity?
Right. So I wrote down a couple things here. But I wanted to say that it's complicated because, on one sense, you can say that many ethics are based in religion if you wanted to look at it from like a historical kind of worldview, maybe. But they aren't yet. You can also argue that they are propagated by religion, you might say, but they aren't necessarily from religion in the sense that morality and ethics, they can be generated without religion, but in the context of history, where and when they do pop up, they can be of a religious nature. So given that, I said that I try to teach my children critical thinking, of course, inclusivity, and to try to see the world from as many perspectives as possible.
I'm just curious, have you studied at all, like, formal argument and rhetoric or logic, like in college, or just on your own?
Just on my own, not in college.
Okay, because I think honestly, whenever I became an atheist, I didn't even know what I was, but my philosophy teacher kind of introduced me to atheism, and the introductory to philosophy course that I took basically taught you how to think, how to think rationally, how to avoid certain kinds of fallacies. And I took about 2 semesters of these introductory courses, and it was very helpful. And I truly wish that a lot of more believers would take these kind of courses, so that even when arguing with people with the Bible or politically, that you have some kind of foundation to do so. Because, well, I'm writing a book right now about racism. I'll probably be finishing up either today or tomorrow. But one of the sections I talk in there about is just fallacies that people can engage in, and mixing up, uses of words. And, there's a lot of fallacies you can avoid. But I think if people had more of a solid foundation of that, we would have a lot less heartache on this planet. But unfortunately, a lot of people are motivated by bias and prejudice and, ignorance and misinformation. So that's just a brutal reality of the world we live in, And how do you personally? It's called "Why Race" in parentheses Doesn't Matter. So there's some interesting parts in there, but this is one of them. But I do want to ask you a question, like, how do you personally stay informed and try to like people use the word ignorant like in a pejorative way. Well, everybody's ignorant about 99.9% of what there is to know in the universe. So it's not really a pejorative. We're arguing about these little small percentage points where we might have an advantage over other people. But how do you personally try to keep informed and try to minimize? I call it minimizing your ignorance.
Okay, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It depends on what avenue of information we're talking about here. I mean, as far as like scientific information, perhaps there's you know, yeah, be more specific. Come on, give me something.
Oh, politically.
Let's stick with that. Okay, politically. So, there's the news, right? We all have our feeds that we have. I try to curate a feed that is eclectic. So, I've got my left and my right wing and my centrists that I wouldn't say trust. I guess you could say trust. Let's say trust.
Tentatively. Tentatively.
No. What I do is I trust them to have the bias that I know that they have.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Like
that's a good way. That's a really good way to put it.
I have Ben Shapiro in my right winger feed because I trust him to have a right winger bias. So
sure.
If I need to know what a right winger thinks about something, I go to him to get that information.
That's really good.
Stuff like that.
Actually, I don't listen to him specifically, but I do like listening to like Matt Walsh and some other liberal stuff. And the thing is, like, I don't need. Good.
I'm sorry. Isn't he in the same network together?
Yeah, actually, he is. It's called the Daily Wire. But the point is that I don't need people to tell me how to think. You know what I mean? I'm more than capable of being able to reason through and use logic and rationality. But I can benefit from information. You know what I mean? Those are two different things. Getting information.
I need people to tell me how other people think because I can't figure out how the rest of you guys think at all.
There you go. Well, I think so. Whenever I was extremely left-wing liberal in college, I used to listen to like Bill O'Reilly, and people like couldn't understand why I like listening to Bill O'Reilly. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I'm like, and especially if you study The Art of War, which I think is one of the greatest books of all time, but Sun Tzu, he talks in there about needing to know your enemy. And for me, I don't debate anymore. I used to debate people all the time. But if I were to engage in debate, I would want to know the person's positions better than they know it, you know? And so you got to hold the thought into your mind and understand it the way that they perceive it. So debate is not my thing, but just as a general principle, if you're going to have discussions, you want to be really well informed of your opponent's position. So I do want to get on to the next question. By the way, feel free to ask me any questions. In fact, after this next question, the next one or two questions, I'll give you a chance to ask me a few because you are a co-host now. So we'll change this up a little bit. But what morality do you think is good to pull out of religion?
Okay, so there are various lessons scattered and infused throughout the Bible and in religion in general. As a general rule, I'd say it's good to, like, for instance, honor one's parents or whatever, to whatever extent those parents are actually good.
Yeah, unless you have shitty parents. That's a caveat.
Yeah, exactly. Concepts like sacrifice allude to things like delayed gratification, so that's a good thing. Then there's forgiveness, which gives us, hypocrisy reduction and, increases the bonds within our own community, hopefully.
Reduction.
Sometimes.
I like
there
that.
There are ethics that I think that can be more well explored thoroughly by the secular community. So I think that there's a place for forgiveness and sacrifice and things like that. And probably there's a good logical basis for most of the ethics that are in the Bible. It's just when you try to stick to them dogmatically. Yeah, exactly. when you try to stick to them in a way that's as if given to you by a divine creator, as if edict from above, that's where you have a problem, because then you have no wiggle room. There's no room to say, oh, maybe we need to think about it in terms of this or that. There's context to be blah, blah, blah. Because fundamentalism is logical. Fundamentalism makes more sense than interpretation. Because if there is a God that's telling you what he wants, that's what you should do. Point blank.
Yeah. Period. You know what? You and I briefly discussed this in the context of something else. Actually, because I was telling you about wanting to take my children to go study into other religions, and you were like, "Well, doesn't the Bible say something against that?" Well, there's a couple of different things to say about that specifically, but one of them, even if I were to want to be the most hardcore, ardent, like Christian out there, I think being able to understand, again, what I was telling you about, being able to understand things like Islam and Buddhism, and try to get to the source of the truth of what they actually believe, as opposed to me believing what I think that they believe. You know, so there is that element, one, and then there is an element two, is even if I believed, which I'm not exactly 100% sure on this, because I believe there's an element of human error in copying or maybe even transcribing like the Bible. But even if I believed the Bible was just 100% the word of God with not one error in it, I have to also factor in that I am a human and that I don't understand Hebrew or Greek. And further, even if I did understand it, I wouldn't understand it the way that this person maybe intended to mean 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So I have to have some humility in approaching the scriptures and saying, I'm doing my best to understand this as a flawed human being. But I'm a sinful person. I'm a broken person. I am doing my best to try to not only understand it, but apply it in my life, because the stuff I do understand well doesn't mean that I actually apply it. So there's a couple things I'm trying to balance here, and that gives me compassion, though, in dealing with people, and patience and understanding, though. So I don't come in and just drop the elbow on people and such, though. But do you have a question for me to ask here?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so you asked me what morality do I think is good to pull out of religion. But is there anything that religion teaches that you think is immoral, that you wouldn't? Is there anything in the Bible that you would never teach your kids?
Wow, that's a tough question to answer.
Do you censor the Bible for your kids?
I think I probably wouldn't introduce my child. No, I know. Trust me, I know. I wouldn't introduce my daughter to the Old Testament till she was probably an adult. I would just pretend like that part didn't actually even exist. I think because some of them, there's a lot of adult themes. There's a lot of adult themes in there. So I will start there, and I will say that, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I would say, yeah, it does cause me some cognitive dissonance. And I'm not sure if some of it's because I feel like maybe we've evolved past certain things, or even something like slavery. That may have been something that God gave us to do because he wanted us to rebel against it, to try to, give us a sense of maybe sometimes when things are immoral, you got to rise up against it. And I honestly don't even know the full answer to that. I'm just saying there definitely are some things that strike me as like, oh, like I really got to teach this to my kid. You know what I mean? There's definitely some stuff that causes me some sleepless nights. I would say that.
I don't know if I should push that further.
Please, no, do so.
Simmer.
No,
I think I should just let it simmer. No, I think you should just let it simmer. Some things are just better to let sit on a slow boil until they boil up in your mind, and then one day it pops, and you realize, oh yeah.
Well, I mean, these things I've been I mean, I'm 40 years old. I've been contemplating some of these things for decades, so it's not like you're going to trip me up on anything. You know what I mean?
I'm not tripping you up. You're going to get it on your own. You're going to see. Yeah. It's all BS.
Well, there is okay. So that's fine. Let's test this. Let's just get it out there, because so you perceive things in the Bible as BS. Okay. So, and I will tell you this, because just real quick, what are like the general ages of your children? Are they like under 10, over 10?
Under 10.
Under 10. So, let's just say you were to see me push a child in front of a traffic. Like, what would be your knee-jerk response to that?
You've already pushed the child into traffic.
Into traffic. Child gets hit by a car.
They've already been hit by a car.
Yeah. What would be your response?
I'd probably try to save the child's life.
Okay, good. And what would be your moral response to me, like to my actions?
I'd obviously judge you as a monster and try to have you arrested or knocked down in some kind of way.
Well, if you didn't attack me, man, something's wrong with you. But okay, anyway, the point being, and that is, suppose on the other side, what you didn't see though, was that there was a semi getting ready to hit that kid, and by me pushing them into the traffic, I actually saved the child's life. Or suppose I saw a sniper who was getting ready to kill the kid. The point in that analogy is that because you're lacking some bigger information, what an action that might seem immoral to you might actually be the more moral thing to do. You know, like if I were to tell you, do you think it's okay to vaporize 200,000 people? Like, what would be your response to that? No. But whenever you factor that same exact thing with, say, like in World War II, and you understand the calculations that the generals were making on how many people were actually going to die as a result of a continual war with people like Japan who have like a samurai culture mentality that they're going to fight you to the very end, you'll understand that this actually saved people in the long run. So your initial assessment of something might be wrong. Like the trolley. This is like the trolley problem.
Well, slow down. Let's back up. I don't want to let it pass.
Go for it.
Said before, remind me of the thing you said before, this Japanese samurai World War II bombing thing.
Yeah.
Well, so let's just deal with that thing. Let's just deal with that because that's fresh in my mind still.
Yeah.
That's under the assumption that they are so resolute that they would never let it go. I mean, yeah, we can maybe draw that logical inference based on their culture, but we don't really know that there's nothing short of that would have stopped them. No diplomatic approach that would have slowed them down, because we already took that step and we're looking back at it from hindsight bias and judging the situation favorably to kind of forgive ourselves of this atrocity. And it's kind of convenient that being the ones that have to get that forgiveness, we have so readily decided, oh yeah, well, we absolutely had to do it. I don't really think that it necessarily follows that because they had a strong culture for being resolute in themselves, that they had to see it all the way through until 2000. Because if that was the case, then why would they stop just because they got bombed one time or even twice or even three times? Why would they ever stop? Why didn't they just stop, keep going until they were literally completely obliterated?
Well, you do realize that their emperor was literally claiming like to be God? So
why do you just keep going?
So if you have people who are believing that, actually, this is something that some people don't understand about the situation. People don't understand about the situation, but the emperor was actually telling people to just throw themselves off of cliffs, civilians, so that it would like freak people out. And so you have people who are that under this kind of mentality, thinking that they're being ruled by God. And so specifically with him, I got to tell you, that's one of the worst immoralities of that.
I'm just saying, I think I'm being ruled by God. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna let myself get blown up.
Right.
God's telling me to do it.
Right. But he was actually allowed to stay, and they had to say he was actually able to stay as like emperor, but they had to say he's no longer God anymore. That was the compromise. After all that he's done, they had to say that he's no longer God anymore. Anyway, so let's just assume for a situation, let's just assume that we had a time machine and we jumped ahead and we saw maybe a year down the later, 1 million people or 10 million people were dead as a result of them not giving up. You would be able to understand, of course, we have some provisional, providential knowledge that doing this action actually saves lives. Just understand that, okay? Just understand the point I'm trying to make with this is that something may seem immoral to me, but when I have more information about a situation, it makes a lot more sense. And so that's all I'm saying about with things you might think are BS with the Bible. It's like you don't know what other factors are going on here. So you make an initial assessment. And actually, these assessments are really nonsense in the first place because we're going off of what we're trying to project our mentality onto a being who is above our way of thinking in the first place, right? So a being who is out of time, perfection, or whatever. So it doesn't even, like, I could understand if you say, oh, this stuff never happened, it doesn't exist. But to say that, to at least do an internal critique of whatever's going on here, doesn't even make logical sense, because obviously, as a Christian, I'm already starting off in the assumption that this God is far beyond this creation. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, we're kind of going way off the topic.
I know, way off topic. Yeah,
we're now into the debating whether the God even exists at all. So
right.
Maybe we should just reel it back. But
yeah, we should. I was just thinking about that.
Because if I say anything else, we're just gonna go off into the next tangent. So let's just go ahead and go back to the next question.
But to answer your question directly, there's definitely things that if I read them, I would definitely think, like, what were you thinking? Like, I would say this, I would have done things a lot differently, personally. Given my knowledge right now, I would have made a lot of different choices.
When you posit that there's this many worlds God that has this knowledge of these alternate universes, and he gets to pick and choose between them. I mean, I guess fine, but to me, it just seems like that kind of moots free will, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Yeah, because as a Christian, I would say it's almost impossible to actually even believe that free will is possible. Honestly, and now it may exist, and maybe it probably does exist, but it's at least it might be something of a paradox. Like, you look at it initially, and it will not make any sense. So it shouldn't. On the surface level, I don't think it makes sense. But then again, God is able to pull off I would think God's able to pull off things that we would think are impossible. So if we do have some kind of free will, maybe he's like maybe just like blinding his eye and allowing us to have some free will, because if he knows what's going to happen before we do it, then it's not really free will, So anyway, it's a complicated mess. It's a complicated mess to go down that one. I don't really want to go down that one too much.
What do you say about impossible things? They don't happen.
What? Well, we'd actually have to break down what we mean by impossible in another discussion, but because I don't think God can do logically impossible things, but things that we might think are logically impossible might actually just be possible. But we'll have to see that for another discussion. Let's go to 3.
Impossible.
Well, what's possible? What's possible? Do you think are things impossible? You might think things are impossible that actually are possible. So
but when I say the word impossible, I'm just trying to convey the concept of impossibility.
Yeah. I saw a guy in North Korea balance himself sideways like this with both of his hands. and remove one of his hands and support himself going sideways with one hand. And if you were to tell me that, I would say that's absolutely impossible. I have no idea how in the hell he did that, but I can tell you I saw it. So it makes no sense anatomically that someone could do that. But I actually saw. If you were to tell me that and I didn't see it, I would bet you $1,000 that didn't happen. So,
but if pressed, you would say, okay, it's not really impossible because I saw it happen. So obviously, it's possible. It's just so weird and beyond belief that it seems impossible, right?
Yeah. But that's what I would say about whatever you think is impossible. But anyway, let's go on to number 3. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on your children converting to or wanting to go to church?
I'd be fine with it. If they want to go to church, if they want to convert to Christianity, let them do it. They've gone to church. All of them have been to a church at some point in their life. What do I want to say about that? Their grandparents are all believers, and they're sneaky fuckers. So when they get a chance, when they get a chance, they like to sneak in their little teachings behind our backs. We don't tell our kids that they're liars. Of course, we don't tell their kids that their grandparents are liars. So they get their chance to proselytize to our kids, and so our kids get a chance to exercise their critical thinking. So there you go. Don't push anything. We just say, okay, so what did grandma say? Oh, really? And what do you think about that? Oh, okay. Interesting. That's how it goes.
So, okay, I have a couple of questions in that. One, is your wife an atheist?
Yes.
Okay. And did you convert her to atheism?
Yes.
Or you converted her?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So the other thing too is, have you had a talk with her parents about not doing that?
No.
Really? Why not? Oh. So is it your parents who are doing it, or her parents?
Her parents. Maybe my parents too. I've talked to my parents about how to do it in the way that I want them to do it. So. Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I don't want my
kids to be closed off from religion. I just don't want them to be
shut down
onto them.
Yeah. There's a really great quote. I might have to look it up right now, but I know the quote. But it's George Orwell. He says, "Every dogma has its day," and I think that's a great quote. But I definitely do think dogma is like the most dangerous thing on this planet, and so
even atheist dogma.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of really strong proselytizing Christians on the internet say that they were raised as strong atheists. So I'm like, I don't want that to happen. So, sorry. Go ahead.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I think taking away the choice from your child is a really bad thing. And I'll just tell you this. I'm not sure if I've showed you these, but I have like all the world religions tattooed like on my body. And a part of that was in response to my parents, my mom's extreme religious, pushing her extreme religion on me and forcing me to go to church and, not accepting if I were to convert to Islam, for example, and not being accepting that I was interested in other religions. So I've told you this, I would want to take my daughter into mosques and to temples and to learn about Islam and Hinduism and Baha'ism. I definitely planned on taking her traveling out with me. I used to do a lot of traveling whenever I was single. But when my daughter gets a little bit older, she's not quite at the age where she would even understand any of it or remember it. So it'd be just kind of like a waste of money. I want her to have some actual memories. So yeah, I think the shoving it down the throat either way. And I will say this is quite embarrassing that as a Christian, I've seen atheists tell me, like I asked the same question to another atheist, like, what if your child came home and told you, like, I'm coming out the closet, I'm a Christian? He'd be like, oh, okay, well, what kind of topping did you want on your pizza? And he's like, it'd be inconsequential. And so I think it's a bit of embarrassment as a Christian that atheists have, more open-minded with that and willing to be accepting of their children. I find it an embarrassment.
I'm sure there are at least a few atheists that would go totally, ape.
But kick out their kids though.
There's got to be at least one.
I can't imagine that, but I could be wrong. I can't imagine that. I genuinely cannot imagine that.
Yeah.
That's great, bro. All right, so I'm gonna ask another question. Oh, by the way, what are you vaping?
Oh, it's the same as always. Strawberry, whatever.
Raspberry. I was gonna say. My guess was raspberry. No. You look like a fruity type of fruity guy who lives enjoy some fruits. Yeah. You drink much?
Alcohol? No.
Yeah. No,
not much. I have scotch every now and then.
All right. They're pretty savage atheists out there. William, that is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I'm not going to make excuses for anyone on either side, but I've seen some worse savage Christians. So I've never seen the atheist equivalent of the Westboro Baptist. Let's just say that. I mean, Matt Dillahunty pushes that envelope pretty close, but I've not seen the equivalent of that. But anyway, I'm going to ask you another question, and then I'll hand it over to you to kind of facilitate the conversation. But do you think that atheism diminishes human value and worth? And how do you teach objective value of human life in a not God world?
I'm sorry, 1 second. Oh, looks like my electricity is going in and out.
You want to go ahead and I can monologue for a second?
I don't know what's going to happen. Hope I don't lose my internet connection. What was the question? Do you think atheism diminishes the human value and worth, and how to teach objective value in a human life? So I don't think that human life has objective value per se. I teach objective value of all life from a secular perspective, and then human life is valued above others from a Homo sapien centric bias. That's a subjective value. So what do you think of that?
Well, I think this is. Well, first of all, I got to say this. I think it's really bizarre for someone to define themselves by something that they don't believe in. So I'll just say that right off the top, because I don't believe in the living hell out of horoscopes, but I would never define myself as a horoscopist and hang around a bunch of people in forums who are anti-horoscopism. So I honestly find the concept of atheism to be extremely bizarre,
really?
Just in and of itself.
Before you move on to the next point, imagine a world ruled by people who were zodiac, blah, 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 whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine where they controlled everything for the last few thousands of years. Like they had laws that said that if you didn't believe in the horoscope, that you couldn't have a seat in the Senate. You couldn't be a judge or whatever. Imagine that they had total control of everything, and only in the past couple of decades did you have some kind of resurgence of rights, and now you're starting to be some kind of population. Now you're like 20% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have the majority now as Christians. Mm-hmm. You've been the majority all this time. You founded this country.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you've had the control the whole time.
So as Christians, well, a lot of those people were mostly deists, as it is. But I'm sure there's some Christians in there. So, but you're talking about specific. Okay, you're talking about very specifically for Christianity. You're talking about just flipping the.
Yeah, imagine the opposite.
Then I would call myself a Christian. Then I would call myself a Christian, and I wouldn't call myself a horoscopist. Okay, I would call myself what I was. So if you're a secular humanist, I would prefer that atheists. I would prefer that atheists. I mean, obviously, I don't have any dictates and whatever you call yourself. I just think it's an odd way to define yourself by something that you don't believe in, personally. But anyway, let's just get past that point here for a second, because this is one of the most dangerous. Actually, it is the most dangerous, maybe the second most dangerous part. I would say, yeah, I would say the second most dangerous thing about atheism, because like individually, atheism probably helps out a lot of people individually. I will grant that. Like I don't think religion is going to be a good fit for everyone. One, and then I do believe that if you do hold on to some like a carpe diem mindset, like this is the only life I have, I better like, try to maximize it. I do believe it's possible that it could have some benefits. Okay. The problem is though, the bigger problem is whenever you want to try to like start a society and base it on
coming in from the. Okay, hear something.
North Korean speakers here, man.
Oh.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
They announced stuff out on. It's really bizarre. They have like speakers out there and they announce it. You could hear
it's
it
like
coming through.
The news or something.
Well, yeah, you know what? They'll announce stuff. We actually live like in public housing here in South Korea. They actually have speakers in your house here. They don't always use them, maybe like once a week, but then they have some that are outside. So Anyway, yeah, one of the.
How long does it usually go for?
Like a minute or so. It's nothing.
So they're about to be done. What are they saying? Do you understand them?
I can barely even.
You can't hear them? If I understood Korean, I could just translate it for you then.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Oh, see, it's done.
Like
I was going to try to tell you what he was saying.
No, it's not over.
Okay. I can't believe you can hear that. Hold on. I can't close this door.
No, it's okay. It's not now.
Okay. Okay. So
on the show.
So because what you just said right now, I'll run with that, and that is the most dangerous. That is the most dangerous thing, because as a society, then you can collectively decide that a Jew's life or Muslim's life or someone with Down syndrome or 8-month-old fetus, that this no longer has life. And because we say that this no longer has objective meaning, I'm sorry. And so if you say that, then all you got to do is just pass some laws, because a lot of stuff that Germany was doing, they just passed laws to take away these people's rights in Nazi Germany. So what they were doing was legal. So I think just to say, oh, well, we just have a subjective value and basing the society on that is extremely dangerous, because then now we can start to run into, well, what if these liberals or what if these atheists no longer have value in our eyes? So that's why, even if I was an atheist, I will tell you this, even if I was an atheist, I would not teach that to my child. I honestly find it so offensive to human dignity that if I had atheism, if I believed in atheism, I wouldn't be trying to spread it to anyone, let alone my own family. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Go ahead, take it away.
I'm just a little confused about the summary of that point there.
Go ahead.
Could you just summarize it when you get a chance there? I mean,
about objective value?
You're saying that you think that atheism doesn't express objective value?
Well, first of all, it can't. It can't. It's not even possible. It can't. I mean, first of all,
atheism is a negative
right.
answer to a single question, right? But
right.
An atheist can.
Yeah, but I didn't say that an atheist couldn't. That's not what I said.
Okay.
I said if you want to base a society on this principle, that is actually, it's the humans that are going to determine as you said, the subjective value of people's life. Then you run into situations where all we have to do is collectively decide, just get 51% of the population to collectively agree that Muslims no longer have value in our lives, in our eyes. So it's a really dangerous.
How is that any different from how it is now?
Okay, so look, so let's say in Christianity, or I should say Christianity, but Christianity obviously influenced the founding fathers. Okay, it would be wrong to say that they were Christians, but they obviously had some ideas about God that was kind of more of more in line with deism. Okay,
that's why I wouldn't say they were all Christians, but they were certainly many of them that were Christians, and they were their deism was Christian based. I mean, come on.
Sure, but this is why, like, the Constitution or Declaration of Independence doesn't talk about Jesus Christ. They're making general affirmations about a creator that endows rights to us. Okay, so I will say this, that I did get a chance to go up to North Korea on a few occasions, and when I was an atheist, and I did get to see the oppression of the people there, and I tried to balance this inside of my atheism to try to find a way to logically condemn what they're doing, and I personally couldn't. Now, you might find a way to do that. I don't know what reasoning goes on in your mind, but for me personally, I wasn't able to get there. And so, again, the problem that you run into is because unless you have like a transcendent source of saying, hey, human beings they have imago Dei and created in the image of God, created with just a general dignity that God has created human beings with. Again, then you run into some subjectivity, as you call it, subjectivity. And then all we have to do is just say, well, 51% of us don't believe in, these people have worth. And that to me, as I said, even if you did convince me about atheism, I wouldn't be spreading it myself, one, and I definitely wouldn't be teaching that to my child. Like, I would
So you're saying that the value of your theism is that you believe that you're getting the objective value of human life from your theism.
No, the value of theism is that is true to me. Anything else is secondary, but that is obviously an advantage over atheism, I would say.
Okay, so how is it objectively true that human life is valuable from theism?
Well, I just told you the concept of imago Dei is that we're creating God's image, and that we all have spirits, and there is just an intrinsic value inside of God's creation. I would say that pretty easy. And I may be lie. Let's just assume that that's a lie. Let's just assume that that's a lie. Let's just assume that that's a lie for a second. There still would be utility behind it. And man, we're getting way off again on the parenting part. But I do want to get this back to you, like.
Well, we're not off on the parenting part because you said that this is why you wouldn't teach it to your kids.
Personally, yeah, if you were to somehow to convince me of atheism, which you couldn't, but if you did, I'm telling you, I find it to be an anathema. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so objective value of human life.
Mm-hmm.
We got to break that down, okay? Objective, what does that mean?
It means it doesn't matter what you or I say about this life, that there's something else that's giving it meaning. It's not related to me and you.
Independent. It is
independent. Yeah.
Okay. In the circles that I run in, we say mind independent is what objective means. Do you accept that one?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. So mind independent is separate from God because God has a mind.
Okay. I'll just roll with that for a second. Okay.
So God is a subject. His perspective is subjective, just like yours is. Now, his might be a little bit more comprehensive because he has more knowledge, sure, theoretically, hypothetically, whatever, but he is still a subject. He has his own perspective, which is not yours. which is not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So whatever he says, does, is, cannot be objective. He has a mind. Nothing he says or does can be independent of his mind. So therefore, nothing he is objectivity is off the table when it comes to God.
I have not heard that line of reasoning before. So you talked about it in something similar. I generally, you said the line of circles that you run in. Maybe you've run into that. I have never heard that, so I don't really. I would need some time to respond to that.
It's like
because
the word objective. It has several connotations. I don't want to equivocate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when we say something is objectively true versus subjectively true, right? We're talking about something that is the object versus something that is the subject, right? So the subject has the mind and the objects don't.
Uh-huh. Yeah, this may be I would have to evaluate this a little bit further. You may be engaging in some kind of equivocation, and this is the reason.
Equivocation, and we're using the other versions of objective.
Right.
So there's a different definition of objective that we would be using and then swapping in and out there. So,
right. And
swapping in and out.
In my book, though, that I was telling you about, I specifically talked about this when referring to racism, because a lot of times people will use a word like a racism, and what they're actually really referring to are words like xenophobia, which is a genuine fear of like foreign things, or maybe stereotypical, or maybe prejudicial. But they swap all these words around, and it really muddies the waters. And specifically, I don't know right now. I would have to evaluate this a little bit further.
Sure.
But I'm not really sure if I could have it. But let's just take it off the table for a second. I'll have to rewatch this later. But so how do you get there like how do you get to say that any life? It's just genuinely curious. Like as an atheist, like what principle would you teach your child to say this person's life has value, period?
Okay, so I have a
just curious.
Yeah, good. I'm gonna do this. Fuck it.
You want to share something?
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull it up before I try to do it. This will be the wrong. Sorry, was not ready to do this.
It's okay.
Was not anticipating it at all.
Well, I'll just go on for a second until you can get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this, I will say one other thing too, because I specifically give the example of how atheists take the word faith and they totally equivocate on what faith actually means, and they make it sound as like Christians are like just covering their eye, walking over to a board and just have a bunch of religions, and you're just like throwing a dart or something where you're just like, there's no logic, there's no science, there's no reasoning or anything behind it. And that's not in any sense of the way in which I use the word faith. To me, my faith isn't a blind faith. There are some elements of faith behind it, because there's things that we cannot see or perceive as humans. You know what I mean? There's sound waves and frequencies and light spectrums that we can't perceive. So we're going off a very limited perspective on things. And so when I use faith, I do have faith in God, but I don't have faith that God exists, because I've experienced God directly. So faith would not, like, I wouldn't say my daughter, I have faith that my daughter exists because I've experienced her, you know? And so, that's just a bit of an equivocation there as well. But do you have something to share?
Yeah, you want to add this?
Yeah. There we go.
All right, so here's my spreadsheet, and a lot of this is just me narrative to myself. So sorry,
I can barely even see that.
You can't read it. Okay, well, that's fine. You can take it off if you want. I'll just read it. So yeah, just take it off the screen. I'll read it. It's fine.
Okay.
So from the is ought gap, right? You know what that is? The is-ought
Yeah.
gap? Okay, so that's from Hume. He observed that you can't derive an ought premise from an is premise. I disagree with that to some extent. I agree that it's not easily done, but I think that you could do it if you could develop a premise that is both an is and an ought at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's Kant, right, who had the hypothetical imperatives, right? These are imperatives derived from goals, things that you must do because of your goal. Given a goal, you must do this. So, like, let's say I want to make $1 million, therefore I should invest money in the stock market, blah, 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 all the different imperatives that you must
I don't know about now. I'm not sure if now would be the best time to want to do that. But yeah.
Right. Probably not a good imperative, but pick a smaller goal. I don't know.
Bitcoin. How about Bitcoin? But you invest in Bitcoin.
Sure.
Sorry.
The point is,
I get what you're saying. I get your point, guy.
Imperatives come from goals. Anytime that you think that you ought to do anything, it's because there's a goal that you are trying to attain. This is one of the definitions of objective that you can equivocate with, but I'm not going to do that. But I'm just saying you could do that here. Okay. Anyways, so you got the hypothetical imperative concept. You've got the is-ought gap, and then you've got my concept of an is that is an ought at the same time, right? So, is there anything that is an imperative that applies to you inherently? So, from those conclusions, you're forced to beg the question: do you have inherent goals? Is there an inherent goal that you, as an entity, simply by virtue of being, are imbued with by at least one of your immutable properties?
Yeah. And if you take on, like, if you are like a secular humanist, I would say that becomes really clear. And I have a lot of respect for like secular humanism. And this is what I was telling you about, is defining yourself from something that you actually are, right? So I said I wouldn't define myself something I didn't believe in. I openly celebrate the fact that I'm a secular humanist, though. Certainly as far as the government goes, I don't invoke the government, or I don't invoke religion at all in any conversation with the government, other than to say that people should have religious freedoms and that people shouldn't be forced to participate or hear any kind of prayers or anything like that. So I would say I'm just as secular as you in that sense. But yeah, if you teach your child secular humanism, then I'm totally down with that.
Okay, yeah. This is a very involved, long... I'm trying to spell out logically exactly where these things come from. But basically, I break it down into these facts, that there are agents that live. They make apparent choices. They must work to gain access to resources. They want to survive. They require other agents to survive. And they require resources to survive. And then survival is the perpetuation of self. Those facts are combined to derive all the facts of morality.
But kids don't understand philosophical. That sounds a bit of like philosophical babble. Like how are you going to actually try to explain that to a kid? You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's an art. It's an art, but you can, right? You just have to find opportunities to apply the information that you know. You have to know it really well, right? But once you understand this stuff really well, you just have to find opportunities to apply it. So like when they're watching a TV show and they see something that's really bad, you just have to show them how agents are working together to obtain resources and work together to survive, because all of it, everything that is good or bad, that is an ought, is derived from these premises, these facts that are, as far as I can tell, indisputable.
And the guy who I told you about, who made that comment about his kids eating pizza after I asked him about them converting, he told me that one of the things that he thought was the worst about Christianity, or he didn't even say Christianity, but religion in general, is that it doesn't help you to understand the underlying reasons why you're doing something, you know. And I think that's somewhat of a valid criticism, I will say, and somewhat not, because I mean, you talk about kids. A lot of times, kids generally don't understand why they should or shouldn't be doing things. You know what I mean? Like I look back,
I get it.
Whenever I was,
here's the thing. No, go ahead. Sorry.
When I look back, whenever I was a kid, my parents would say the stupid line because I told you so, or the line I hated so much, which was my number one worst line that they used, was, "You'll understand when you're a parent." Now I'm a parent and I do understand the kind of things that they're saying, but in the moment, the kind of things that they're saying, it's like, how do you really make sense of, you know what I mean, of a kid, especially like, for example, if they just want to eat cotton candy as opposed to their actual vegetables, you know, try to go through and try to explain the science behind that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
And I was just going to say that
I don't have all the answers myself.
Even though it is better, I'd say, obviously, to teach them the reasons behind why you tell them yes and no to every little thing. Obviously, in the world that we live in and have constructed and have been living in for past generations, it's not necessarily economically feasible to, I mean, reasoning with a child with a child is not a simple thing. It takes patience, a lot of patience. It takes dedication, right? It takes a lot of dedication, and you have to understand the material that you're trying to teach them anyways in the first place, right? This
you got to know well.
This morality stuff is not simple, right? I mean, to know why you think something is good or bad takes reflection and in time that it's a luxury and a privilege to be able to sit back and think, oh, why do I think that this is good or bad? Blah, blah, blah. People don't have time for that. The average person, it's a meme, right? You know, ain't nobody got time for that. You know, you remember that. That's a that went viral because everybody relates to it, right? Everybody, even people who do have time for that, don't got time for that, right?
God, yeah. No, those are good points, and I will say this.
So I'm just saying that the reason why the spanking, the expedient parenting of yesteryear caught on and is so popular and has perpetuated for so long is because it is effective and gets the job done in a quicker or shorter amount of time and allows parents to have more time on their hands to do other things besides parenting, basically.
Yeah. So do you believe in spanking?
I don't believe in it. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't condemn somebody. I'm not going to tell you you're a bad person if you spank your kids. I think that you should explore not doing that if you can. But I think we all should try not doing that. But I'm not going to try to pretend like I'm some holier than thou person who's never spanked their kids before. I just have learned that that's something that I'm going to try not to do.
Especially right now, it doesn't even make sense for me to try to do something to try to explain something to my daughter as it is. So yeah, there is an expedient bit where she got into a stage where she just didn't want to eat like food. I'm not sure if she didn't want to. Maybe she had some kind of other thing going on with her. She actually started to lose her hair. Her hair started to fall out, you know. And I started to be able to see her ribs. It was getting really scary. And my thing is like, I'm never going to hit my daughter. The Bible talks about sparing a rod. I don't know exactly what that refers to, but I would never use an object to like hit my child. You know, that's a no for me. I had a Mexican mom growing up, and they'll hit you with anything that's in arm's reach, like chanclas. You know what a chancla is? It's like a sandal.
Oh yeah.
There's like this thing, you know. I don't know. It might just be lower income people, because I've heard from other lower income people that when your parents are you know, on the lower economic class, that they'll tend to resort to hitting you with items. Personally, again, I might use an open hand, like
My mom used a brush. My dad, he made paddles, and my grandma had a helping hand, and my mom tells stories, horror stories, of all kinds of stuff from her. Oh my gosh. Anyways,
yeah,
I mean, it's difficult because they're helpless, and they're at our mercy, and they didn't ask to be brought into this world. They didn't ask for any of this. We forced them to exist based on our carnal desires, based on our primitive emotional need to be parents or whatever the hell, to reproduce or to have a legacy or whatever selfish desire made us want to be a parent, right? That's why they exist, and that's the only reason why they exist.
Mm-hmm.
They're here to satisfy some stupid desire in us, and now they have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it is our responsibility to ensure that they grow up to not be some kind of psychopath.
Yeah, you know what? I was just going to ask you, any chance you've ever heard of the Dnipropetrovsk maniacs from Ukraine?
No.
So these two 19-year-old dudes in 2007, they went on like a 21-day killing spree where they murdered like 21 people in 21 days, and some of the most just horrific, sadistic fashion. And they videotaped some of them, and some of those videos actually made their way online. And as they're making these videos, they just think it's the funniest thing in the world that they're mutilating and torturing these people. And in the course of the trial, a lot of information came out, and the parents were actually there trying to say that this footage of them torturing these people was like CGI, And we're talking about like this is 2007. It was just the most obnoxiously insane excuse that they were trying to make for their children. And when they started examining like court records and stuff, both of the fathers were like well connected. And anytime their kids got into trouble, they just got them out of the situation. I mean, there was never any consequences to where, because they had political connections. Like one of the fathers was like the pilot for the president, and so he just called in a few favors and got his kids. These kids could have been stopped. They could have gotten professional help whenever they needed it. Whenever these psychopathic tendencies were starting to come out. And I know that's an extreme example, but I think for me, that just really, it really hammered home that like my daughter, I need to help her to like the best thing I could do for her is to face the consequences of actions that she does. I'm not saying that it has to be physical, but whatever it might be, whether it's with the law or with school, that like I shouldn't try to intervene and try to get her out of a situation where she, she needs to own up and take responsibility for what she's done. And I know that's an extreme example, but my parents did some very similar things with me because I just was very pampered, very spoiled, and they let me get my way in things that they shouldn't have done a lot of ways. And I paid the price for that heavily as an adult because I would constantly be thinking I could get my way in situations that really I couldn't. And I didn't know how to, it took me years to get over that. So there is definitely spoiling kids and allowing them to get away with stuff is dangerous. But you had mentioned exploring other elements of like punishment. Do you have any ideas on that? Like maybe some possibilities like taking away rights or.
Yeah. So one thing that I try to do is have like toys that they have that they like a lot that I really don't care about, that I can use as leverage, that they are the consequences toys, so to speak. This isn't a class that they're aware of, right? But it's it's a class of possessions that they own, right?
Mm-hmm.
That if they are being unreasonable, that
Mm-hmm.
those toys will be the ones that have the consequences fall upon them, right? That's one thing that I try to do sometimes. What else we do?
Well, that's good.
There's also, obviously timeouts on a timer, structured. They try to make deals. We do negotiate.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
We do a lot of negotiation.
That's awesome.
I think it's good. I think it's really good to
No,
negotiate with them. They learn that problem solving and stuff, I guess.
I'll tell you this. I never wanted to be a parent until I saw my sister with a kid. And my she's actually a big politician in California. And she was a lawyer before that. So she's very matter of fact, you got to be very driven to do something like that, and seeing her being a mom just totally changed her, and I was like, wow, if this can change my sister, man, I'm sure it could change me. And it has, but one of the things that I saw her do, which is amazing, is she talks to her son like she would talk to almost anybody else. Like the guy's just obscenely articulate for his age. Like her husband has a PhD as well, so they both have PhDs. But she would get into conversations with him and be like, okay, well, you don't have to eat your food, but if as soon as you get done, well, this is going to be the consequences, and well, you evaluate this for yourself. And
I guess that's the main one. Yeah. So the main thing is lectures, right? That's the main punishment in this house is lectures. It's lecture time with Dad, where we're going to sit down and Daddy's going to explain to you exactly what you're doing is wrong and all the philosophical implications, and you're just going to get your ears chewed off for however long it takes for you to understand it. And I'm going to make you explain to me exactly what's going on. And it's a lot for a little kid. So they don't like it. They don't want a lecture. So it's either take the lecture, or we have the summary version, which is tell me what you did wrong, tell me why it was wrong, tell me right now, and tell me why you won't do it again.
Well, that's okay. My daughter's not quite there yet, but maybe the next year or two, I could start having some of those philosophical. Maybe I'll grab like a scotch, as you like, and maybe I'll grab like a cigar, have like a full-on out. Maybe I'll psychoanalyze her as well.
I didn't think of it because it's not really a punishment for me. I like doing it.
All right. Well, I have one more question for you, and I think this leads it quite good into where you just went with that. But what is your advice for religious parents?
So the main thing that I thought of when I saw this question is to not tell the kids that this is the truth. Just simply tell them that this is what you believe. Teach them as many different perspectives as possible, and be as honest as you can about it, because you don't know for 100% certainty that this is the truth, unless you literally do, in which case go ahead, I guess. But I felt that the idea of being taught that the religion that I was taught was the truth and the only truth was a lie, a disingenuous lie that should never have been taught to me. And I feel that nobody should be taught something like that.
Do you feel resentment and anger towards like religion as a whole, or JWs?
The organization, I'd say yes. Not the people within it, I suppose. I wouldn't say resentment, because what's the point of that? But I definitely think that it's a bad thing that needs to be countered ongoing.
Specifically with the church, or just religion in general? Like, where are you going to?
Oh, I'd say it varies from religion to religion. Some churches are worse at it than others. But in general, religion has that problem. They all want to claim to be the truth when nobody has the truth. Yeah,
that is one of my biggest hangups about, I think, the Bible and Christianity, because of the fact that I'm not sure if I've ever met like a believer who doesn't think that their brand of interpretation or Christianity is like exclusively the right way. It's like, I know I have met some of them, but it's like 90% plus of the people have such rigid way of thinking. And especially like if you don't understand Greek, if you don't understand Hebrew as it is, maybe having a little bit of humility in this area and saying, hey, maybe this is God's word perfectly, but that does not mean that I understand it perfectly, you know? That doesn't mean that I'm not flawed in my interpretation of it. Because that's the way I feel like. I feel like on my best days, I know maybe 25% of what's in there. And then even on my best days living it out, I'm like maybe 50%. You can like follow me around with a coin and just flip that thing up, whether or not I'm going to make the right choice minute to minute. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. And so I've gotten a lot better. I'm very optimistic of the trends of my life that in 5-10 years, I might be 10 times better, especially having a daughter. She motivates me to be a better person because ultimately she's going to take on characteristics of me, and my issues are going to come out in some way or another, you know? And so I'm like, I got to address this stuff. I got to get my life in order in a lot of different ways so that I can be a moral agent and demonstrating ethics and, just goodness in general. So I think, but I know I certainly have a long way to go to get there. But you have any last thoughts?
Well, I wish I had thought of this before, but now it's too late. So I guess not.
Oh, well, you got to close up with something, even if it's just a sentence or two. I can go first. I can go first if you want. You can collect your thoughts.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I will say this is that, like, demonizing either side in this argument is like wrong in and of itself. We can go after some philosophical foundations of what people are believing, but we got to understand we don't exactly know how people are coming to the conclusions that they're coming to. It could be for completely rational reasons, and it could be for irrational reasons. So we got to try to evaluate things individually on a case-by-case basis. And specifically with parenting, I think teaching your kids to evaluate situations individually and people individually as well. I think that's one of the big ones right there, whether it be race, gender, orientation. The most fundamental thing is to treat people with dignity and respect. Starting there, if that's the only thing that I teach my daughter, even apart from the Bible, even though I have the basis to do it inside of the Bible, which, because I'll just touch on this briefly, the book of James says that we shouldn't even curse people with our mouths because they've been created imago Dei, in the image of God. And so if we're not even allowed to curse people with our mouths, then that's much less that we have the right to abuse them in any other way, whether it's physically, politically, religiously. So for me, I see an ultimate foundation for ethics inside of the Bible to teach my daughter. But at the end of the day, I also want to teach her to respect people who don't have the same views as us, And I think, having a philosophical foundation, I think maybe just that's the other part. Just teach your kids philosophy. That's a good step in the right direction. Philosophy and human rights. Good.
I do just want to say, to wrap it up, that I have not been a perfect parent, and there are a lot of things that I regret.
Sure.
I have a daughter who I haven't seen in a long time that I miss terribly. And I don't know if she'll ever see this video. I just wish I could have been there more for her. I wish I had been a better father for her and her brothers and sisters when I was there. But I was a broken person.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a broken person for a long time, and I'm still not totally healed by any stretch of the imagination, but
Mm-hmm.
I've grown a lot. And it's difficult when broken people find each other and try to fix each other.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always work out too well. Sometimes they end up hurting each other even more.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they end up making children, and those kids pay the price for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big responsibility to have children. Having sex at all is a big responsibility, and it's not something that anybody should take lightly.
Mm-hmm.
The probabilities and possibilities are endless. The moment that they come out of the womb into this world, there are people trying to exploit them and abuse them in all kinds of disgusting ways.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to do but try to do your best to protect them
Mm-hmm.
and hope you don't fail or mess up or screw them up yourself in some messed up way that you didn't even see coming because you were just doing your best, right? It's not a fair game. It's not. There's a good part of me that thinks it's not even good to have children at all. Like it's just an immoral thing in the first place. You know, like why even have a child and bring them into this horrible world?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're gonna do it, give them the respect that they deserve of a person who didn't ask for this, that you forced into that situation, you know? And just try to be humble, as you said before, right? Have the humility to recognize that you don't know everything and that they need love. And I don't know what you mean by love, but when I say love, I mean to put their needs at an equal level to your own, their needs and their wants. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I do want to say one thing, Kaz. Go to hell, because you should not be outshining your host. But that was badass. I'm gonna I'll drop this mic for you right here. That was amazing. Wow, I think I'm about to talk about putting something on the burner. I do want to say just one quick thing before you go. That was incredible, as I said. But I think this is what's good about this podcast, though, is that we can philosophically tinker around with some ideas, but at the end of the day, like you and I, we're both fathers, we're both husbands, we're both humans who are flawed. I don't hide behind. I don't use my religion to hide from the fact that I'm a very broken and flawed person. So I'm just completely open about that fact. And that's one area in which we can find empathy and humility and having respect for each other. So this podcast, we don't always get things right 100% of the time, but I'm definitely, when I saw you a couple of months ago, I'm definitely glad I reached out to you because you've shown to me exactly what I thought you could contribute to this podcast. So I want to say thank you for that. And looking forward to a lot more talks with you, brother. We're just scratching the surface. So I do want to leave you with this outro. Stick around for one quick minute and then tell you real quick about how to find us. Check us out at www.rhepodcast.com. See more information about us and some of the nonprofits that we're supporting right now. So we've done a lot of really good work. We're working on some projects all over the world. So keep coming back to see what else we got going on because there's some exciting stuff. And, check us out, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, just about anywhere you can find someone, you can find us. And I want to leave you with this outro. If you're not subscribed, please be sure to do so. And again, Cass, thank you very much. I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of probably the day and maybe the week.